Episode 36, Flashback, Leaving the City. My first few days were bad. I came in with a backpack, two duffel bags, a fanny pack, with pots and things hanging from the back, and a tent. I'd planned this transition for a while. I bought all the camping supplies I thought I would need to survive and kept them in my closet. I sold everything else and put it in the bank. I knew my future was in DeReg, but I didn't know when, and I dreaded it. I tried my hardest to stay boring and non-reactive in front of the cameras. The cameras were everywhere, always watching me. I'd gotten really good at not showing any hurt or anger. But the less reactive I learned to be, the more challenges they would put in front of me, pushing me to explode. I don't know who they were exactly, but they orchestrated everything that went wrong in my life. These psychopaths would do anything for ratings. Every relationship I'd ever had was sent by them. Every romantic moment, every perfectly timed kiss. One ex's mother hated me from day one. Tell me that's not written out of a sitcom. The most obvious were the cheaters. Twice I had relationships only to find they were married the entire time. The directors didn't even bother to cast single men. When I confronted them, they denied knowing anything about a TV show. They would do anything to maintain their story and not lose their starring role in the life of Olivia. They would rather call me crazy and leave me to wonder if I am than to just be truthful. These relationships always ended when I found out. One guy I found a camera pointing on me as I rolled onto my side in his bed the first night we spent together. Another I followed and found him having a secret meeting with men in suits. One didn't work where he said he did. I know, because I sat outside the building. He never showed up. I fed a lot of birds that week. At first, I'd cry and wish for them back, despite knowing it was never real to begin with. I learned to bottle up the sadness. They wanted me to cry. Crying makes good TV. Then there's my parents. I can't quite believe I was born or sold into this, but they were definitely in on it. They would call to check in on me out of nowhere. They'd start in on me about what I should do with my life until I'd break down crying. I eventually blocked their number. I love them. How could I not? But I didn't trust them. At work, coworkers would sabotage me or gossip or take credit for what I did. They were directed to do these things to push me to explode. But when I quit, I didn't explode. I didn't give anyone that satisfaction. I just picked up my purse and walked out of the building. Even the TVs have cameras now. I'd torn the frame off of mine at home looking for it, but I couldn't find it. They make them so tiny now. It sat unplugged in the corner. But really, I knew they were all over the apartment. The microwave, the clock, the building next to mine, waiting to look in if I opened the windows. So I set up my tent in my living room. I'd spend most of my nights reading in there, no electronics, reading with a glow stick. If I needed to cry, I'd turn the stereo up loud, then crawl in and zip myself in, curled up on a pile of blankets. I continued living in my apartment until they evicted me. I could have lived on my savings for a year, but I knew the more I spent here, the less I'd have when I was homeless. I knew I wasn't going to get another job. They'd make it too difficult. I spent the month selling everything and putting the proceeds in the bank. When the cops came, I had nothing left but the bug-out bag I'd prepared. I strapped it on and walked out into the streets, down to the truck stop, and found a ride out of town. He only took me to the exit. I had to walk the rest of the way to DeReg. My back and shoulders ached by the time I reached the checkpoint. I didn't even know that existed. "Hi," I said to the guards. "I'm new here." I smiled at them. The dogs approached. The guards didn't look at me. "Where do I go from here? Is there somewhere I can go to for my first night?" I asked. The dogs began walking back. The men didn't reply, just waved me to go on. So I did. It seemed like another mile before I hit the wall of DeReg. From here, it looked quiet, intimidating. It would be a whole new kind of struggle, but it would be on my terms. I took a moment to appreciate that as I stood in the middle of the high desert, there were no cameras on me. I was completely free. I knew cameras wouldn't last here. They'd need solar panels because batteries run out. They'd never get enough of them to do a show. As I got closer, my heart racing, I identified breaks in the wall that appeared to be entryways. So I walked in. The open expanse of desert was replaced with close high fences and walls that changed every 20 or so feet. I tried talking to a few people through their fences, but only got mean glares. One man barked at me. Then another ran up and snatched the tent from my hand. I turned and yelled, but found he had a friend who was looking to see what he should grab. I ran. I was terrified. Alone. Clueless. This was way worse than I ever thought it would be. I thought it would be a bunch of people working together. I didn't expect this. They seemed barely human. I jogged as far as I could. I noticed the pathways opened up and it started to feel less crowded. I slowed down some, watching my feet hit the dirt, trying to catch my breath. A sparkle caught the corner of my eye. Then another. Was that glitter? The further I walked along, the more the ground began to sparkle. It lifted my spirits immediately. As I wandered on, I came across a large statue, some kind of mermaid. I pulled my pack off and allowed it and myself to drop down under her shadow. I drank from my water bottle. I wet my hands and wiped my face. I debated if I should stay here the night or find somewhere. After the sun began to set, people began walking around, and I decided it wasn't safe there. I pulled up my packs and continued to wander. I found an empty-looking house not too far away. It was used, but it did not look like anyone stayed there. There were no items of value there, just garbage strewn about. I went inside and started making my place there. I unpacked the food and set it in one corner. That would be the pantry area. Then I made my bed in the other corner. I was pleased I wouldn't need the tent after all. Things were looking up. I sipped some water and nibbled some Ritz crackers. I pulled my phone out, unwrapped it, and booted it up. I checked in on social media. It was quiet. I didn't have any friends anyway. I just followed groups. I played a phone game until I fell asleep. Episode 37, Flashback, DeReg Disco. I awoke to loud music, yelling, cheering. I stuck my head out of the door and saw people partying. Like a lot of people partying. It was like Mardi Gras out there. Shirtless women in body paint. One man wore only a boa. Another had at least the decency to tie a Crown Royal bag around his privates. I stepped out into the crowd to check it out. Some blacklights had been turned on around the statue. The thick group of people dancing made it so the base of the statue couldn't be seen. I didn't see it in the daylight, but her body was painted to glow under the lights. Blues, purples, and greens. The people danced and yelled. They seemed to dance to anything. Sometimes it was techno, but then it would switch to rock or hip-hop or country with no real rhyme or reason. The dancing moves were equally chaotic. Just then, I was bumped into by a group of girls. "Oh, gosh, we didn't see you there," one said, pushing my hair behind my ear as she leaned in. I smiled and looked down. "I'm sorry." I replied, "You should take this off," she said while assertively trying to pull my shirt off. She seemed assertively aroused. No, thank you, I'm good," I said back. She scowled at me, then yelled, "Hag." Others stopped and looked. I put my head down and walked away fast. I was no longer enjoying this. I made my way back to the hut, went inside and closed the door. I plopped down on my makeshift bed and decided to do what I had been putting off. Cry. I had never felt so alone, so unsafe. For a bizarre moment, I missed the cameras in the city. I cried until I tired myself. Then I curled in a ball, pulled my sleeping bag up, and stared into the dark. That's when I noticed my food was gone. I shot back up and pulled out my flashlight. That is, I tried to pull out my flashlight. One of my duffel bags was also missing. I groped around looking for my phone. It was still here. I unwrapped it, booted it up, and turned the flashlight app on. My food was all gone. And one bag. Which means they got a lot of my clothes. But all the important stuff was still in my backpack. I pulled everything in close, putting it in between the wall and myself. Curled in tight and continued crying as music blasted and lights flashed through the cracks in the building. I woke up a few hours later with 5 people passed out in the room with me. One couple lay together and the others, males, were just strewn about with the garbage. One of them wore plastic devil horns. Another had ripped tighty-whities that had been marbled with spray paint and sweat. The girl was topless with matted dishwater hair. I quietly gathered my things and walked out. I didn't know what else I would find out there, but I felt it had to be better than this. I wandered south until I reached a wall of buses. I followed it east and eventually hit a large door welded from sheet metal. I banged on it. No one answered. I continued east, The endless stream of people who appeared to be passed out and half naked didn't end. They were everywhere. I followed the wall right out to the mesa. That was it. There was nothing left. The bus wall continued around the corner. I turned right and followed it 100 yards, then dropped my gear and sat down. I tried to look under the buses, but couldn't see anything. I booted up my flashlight app and shined it underneath. There appeared to be something obstructing the other side. I didn't know what else to do, so I slid my bags under, then myself. I laid on my sleeping bag under the bus, trying not to imagine what creepy crawlies might be under there with me. My entire body was sore, but for the moment I at least felt safe and still. I was hungry, but safe. I spent the rest of the night fading in and out of sleep. The next morning I woke suddenly to the sound of music, a loud horn playing a familiar tune. I didn't know the tune, but I knew it to be military. Was it the song they play at funerals? I didn't think it was the national anthem. The sun had just started to come up. What the hell was this? I'd enjoyed the rest of the song, but I knew I couldn't stay laying on my back much longer. I heard military-type chanting from inside, but decided my things were safe out here. I rolled up my items, hid them behind a tire, and walked back the way I came in search of food. Knowing most of the partiers would still be passed out, I peeked into homes where I could, and then snuck in looking for food. I was able to find a can of cranberry sauce, a bag of weed, dried beans, cigarettes, booze, and a half-eaten pack of breakfast tarts, which I ate immediately. I hid my cranberry sauce and beans behind a tire back near the wall. I decided to walk up to the front. I thought the people up there might be awake, and that I might be able to trade the other things for more food or water. I quickly got 2 cans of ravioli and an orange for the booze. But it didn't take long for me to notice people were coming from the front, all carrying things. I made my way in that direction to find vans were handing out food. There was none left by the time I got there. I did get a few bottles of water, though. I managed to trade the weed with an old guy walking back who carried a box of saltines and a can of spaghetti. I tried to trade the cigarettes with another guy, but he began to laugh and spin as he jumped, then grabbed the cigarettes and a can of ravioli and ran. Somehow, this made others look at me for things to steal, like they hadn't thought of it until he did it. I felt them closing in on me. I turned and ran. They didn't chase long, and I made it back out the side into the mesa. I walked along the edge, reached the tire where I had stashed the cranberries and beans, and grabbed them, and continued on my way back to where I put my other things. I was relieved to find my bags undisturbed. Until this moment, it felt like everything that could go wrong had. I sat against a tire and ate some crackers as I dug through my bag for the can opener. I panicked a little with every passing second that my hand didn't touch it, but eventually found it. I opened the chili beans and began dunking crackers in it. I put my little solar charger out to charge my phone and decided to rest under the bus the rest of day. In the morning, the same song played on the horn. I lay there until the wind kicked up some dirt, and I began sneezing uncontrollably. I went quiet for a minute, wondering if anyone on the other side heard. That's when the barking started. First faint, then closer. Then came scratching at the barrier on the other side. I scurried to gather up my things. I didn't know what would happen, but I wanted to be able to run if I needed to. The dogs didn't stop. I sat as still as I could, and they didn't stop. Then I saw Boots approach from down the wall on the mesa side. I scurried further down and rolled my body behind the tire as tight as I could. The barking followed, and the Boots kept coming. 2 pair. In their shadow, I could see they carried rifles. They stopped on the other side of the tire. "Bronson, hush!" yelled one man. One dog on the other side quieted, then the others. "You can come out. We won't kill you unless you shoot at us first," he continued. "I don't have a gun," I squeaked back. "Come out," he repeated more stern this time. I was now kicking myself for saying that. Now I was harmless, which seemed far worse. I crawled out to stand before 2 men, both dressed in fatigues, and did the only thing I could do, cry.